Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here. So today we're going to be doing a little more of War Thunder patch 1.53 hype. What you just saw was the Panzerwerfer 42, and we're going to go over that in just a minute. I do have a video out on some War Thunder 153 hype vehicles already. The BM824, which is multiple rocket launching systems similar to the Panzerwerfer 42, somewhat similar. I mean, they fire rockets, unguided rockets at that, which is on the T60 tank chassis. You can check out the video for that. The link's in the video description below. It also showed off the P-38E and P-38K, two new American fighter planes. But anyway, so the Panzerwerfer 42, it's a premium rank 2, unlike the BM824, which is a premium rank 1 for the Russians, but this German rank 2 premium is a half track. Obviously it's a little different than the T60, but what is interesting about this is it's not very mobile because it's a very heavy weapon system on top of a half track. So you're not very mobile because of the high weight. However, the rockets are highly accurate. And you also have an MG42 that will work, unlike the BM824, which other than the rockets has no offensive or defensive armament whatsoever. I mean, how effective an MG is going to be, you know, on lighter tanks and you know, half tracks, flak tracks, stuff like that, you would be able to do something. But then again, it's really, I don't really know how effective it's going to be, but it's got 158mm rockets. So in realistic battles, it has 10 rounds, so you'll be able to fire 10. You have 10 stored within the half track, and then you're going to have to reload any more rockets at the capture points, which we're already familiar with the Sherman Calliope. What's interesting though is that these 158mm rockets supposedly have hitting power that's somewhere between 105 and 122mm high explosive shells, which will be capable of killing tier 3 tanks. And then if you shoot right in front and are able to explode, you know, under the underside of a tank chassis, you should probably be able to kill some tanks that way, right? So while the sounds for the rockets aren't historic, they are going to add authentic sounds a little later. So anyway, that was the Panzerwerfer 42. So if you think about it, we've got the American rocket launching Sherman Calliope. We're going to have the Russian BM824 at tier 1, which is premium. And then we're going to have the Panzerwerfer 42, which is going to be premium tier 2. So all around, we're going to get a lot more unguided rockets other than aircraft in the game. I would imagine that every nation's going to have their own, so let me know which other unguided rocket launching vehicles you think they're going to add. I'm hoping for the Sherman Tulip as just one of my examples, and obviously the Sturm Tiger, because that's a big old rocket, and wouldn't that be interesting? Anyway, so what we're looking at right now is the T25. In my personal opinion, this is extremely necessary for American medium tankers, because if you look at it, I think the American tankers only have 6 heavies, right? And between the Sherman M4A3 76 and the Pershing, there's just like nothing there. So this is going to fill that gap. It's not going to be premium. It's going to fill the tier 4 gap right before the Pershing tank with a battle rating of 6.0. So that's kind of interesting. And it's got the 90mm M3 gun, which is the same gun that the M26 Pershing has. So you're going to have your T33, M71, M304, and M82 rounds. What's interesting is the M304 APCR round and the M71 APCBC are going to be pretty good rounds to have. So, I mean, this is great. I mean, for you Sherman tankers who've been trying to get up to Pershing, this thing's going to be a nice gap filler for you between 5.7 and 6.7, sitting at 6.0. So all around, I'm pretty excited for that. Now what we're looking at right here is something kind of interesting. It's definitely a novelty plane. I'm not sure how good it will be, but this is a Yak-9B, and it's a bomber modification of a Yak-9D, and that's the long-range version of the Yak-9, not armed with a 37mm cannon, so it's got one 20mm and one 12.7mm machine gun. But what's interesting about it is, since it's a bomber, right, but it doesn't carry bombs under, you know, the plane. It has 4 vertical tubes capable of carrying 4 100-kilogram bombs. that's cool and all, and it's a very unique system. But if you think about it, since they're vertical tubes, you're not going to be dive bombing with this. The Russians developed it because the Ak-9 was highly popular and highly mass-produced in Russia. So I guess, hey, let's bomb some stuff, right? Let's make a bomber version. But it's an area bombing target. So like, if you think about it, I'm not really sure how effective it's going to be in realistic battles. It's going to be interesting to see people experiment with it. It is kind of cool that they're adding it. I'm not sure if it's going to be premium or, a mainstream fighter plane or fighter bomber plane. But it's kind of strange, I think. But that's what makes it cool for me, is the fact that it is strange. I kind of like that. Anyway, for you British jet jockeys, this is something that you've been waiting for a long time. You can finally fight top tier MiGs with the Hunter F1. This bad boy's armed with 4 30mm guns, but only 150 rounds per gun, so you're gonna have to be a little bit accurate. But I mean, if you think about it, you only need 1 or 2 30mm rounds to hit, and you're gonna down an enemy jet. And hopefully, those pesky MiG-15s, are gonna give them a good run for their money. Also, it's gonna have, it should, historically, it had hard points for rockets and bombs. It entered service in 1954. So all around, you finally have something that is not a meteor or a venom, and hopefully you can hang with the MiG-15s. And I would imagine you could, because this plane looks pretty sweet. It looks like a freaking arrow, man, just darting through the sky. I mean, like, trying to think about like what other British jets would be in the game. This one's just gorgeous. And it sounds like the 30mm sound, the sound effect sounds just like the Horton Ho 229. But anyway, so now what we're looking at is something that I think is honestly the most interesting tank in the bunch, because it's the first tier 5 light tank. This is the T-92. It was developed, but I think that they went with the Sheridan instead of the T-92. But what's kind of cool is it's got the same gun as the Walker Bulldog, right? Which it's the first tier 5 light tank. The Walker Bulldog was the tier 4 light tank for the Americans. So you can see how there's a lot of American tanks coming in here. Much needed, I think. But hey, when are the British tanks coming out? That's what I want to know. I wonder if 1.53 is going to have British tanks as well. Huh. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I have made a video on the announcement of the British tanks that they showed off. The video for that will be linked in the video description below. But anyway, back to the T-92. It's light on armor. It has basically the same armor and the same 76 millimeter main gun that the Walker Bulldog had. Interestingly enough, you just saw it there, that it's got a 50 caliber and a 30 caliber machine gun, and those strange little, not really turrets, but whatever they are, on top of, the turret. And it's kind of similar to the AMX-13 French tank, and the Israeli Merkava was somewhat influenced by it, or similar to it. But it is actually, though it's light on armor, it's more survivable than the M41 Walker Bulldog. Look at this comparison right now. You'd notice that it's so much smaller. And it uses lighter weight materials, so it should be faster. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation, so you should be able to get hull down with a very, very low profile anyway. So this would be a very interesting tank for realistic battles, despite the fact of how lightly armed and armored it is. You're able to fire 12 rounds per minute, and it's going to be firing those Sabo rounds that the Walker Bulldog has, so which was the tank that introduced Sabo rounds to War Thunder, interestingly enough. So all around, it's going to be kind of interesting. Furthermore, they put the engine in front of the crew when you're shooting at it from the front, so the crew has a better chance of survivability, like you've seen in lower tiers in some cases, where tank players will reverse towards the enemy because they're using that engine block to soak up all those shells. I've also noticed that with Russian tanks, a lot of times their gas tanks, interestingly enough, act as added armor, because they're using diesel and they don't use petrol or gasoline, so less flammable to blow up that way. But still, like, those components, like the engine block, are going to absorb shells unless you're firing like lasers, you know, or some of the much higher tiered. I'm curious to see what the battle rating is, because that's going to make a big difference whether or not the engine block's actually going to be able to soak up anything or not. But hey, so I mean, I think this is going to be faster than the Walker Bulldog, and be able to fire Sabo rounds at 12 rounds per minute. Like, that should be pretty interesting to see how it does. First, and you know, and finally, the fact that it's the only tier 5 light tank in the game so far makes it a rather unique tank. So let me know which one was your favorite. What other vehicles do you wish they'd add in a future patch? I'm really hoping that they add the British tanks. I mean, I've been waiting on that forever. And the fact that there aren't premiums, like British tanks for the Americans, the Germans, and the Russians is silly, because the Germans captured British tanks. The British sold tanks to the Russians. It's like, what's going on? Why are there no British premiums in the game a year ago? I mean, or whenever tanks were dropped. Let's see. Yeah, you know, what's going on with that, guys? I don't know. Anyway, so that is the end of this round of the patch 1.53 hype. I've got 2 other videos on British tanks and the BM824 and P38E and P38K in the video description below. I'm currently in the Florida Keys right now, so if you want to check out what's happening, you can check out my Instagram or Twitter, both those linked in the description below. Anyway, but it's after midnight. I gotta wake up early, but I wanted to get this video out. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all appreciate it. Let me know what you're looking forward to most, and I will talk to you soon.